We're so glad you're tuning in to another episode of The Catholic View for Women, where we give you news and views from a truly Catholic perspective. Hi, I'm Teresa Tomeo, along with my co-host Elena Rodriguez and Janet Morana. And on our episode today, we're going to be talking about a favorite topic of mine, and you'll find out why: the deacon's wife.
That's right.
It's very exciting for me to talk about this. I'm so excited.
Well, you know, Teresa, I was obviously at Dominic's ordination, Dominic Pastore, when he was ordained a deacon, but I'd like to take you back. When did Dominic first say to you, I think I want to be a deacon? And then what was your reaction to that news?
Well, I'm so glad you asked. Dominic has been ordained now over 6 years. He celebrated 6 years in the diaconate on October 6th in 2018. And so obviously he's going into his 7th year now. It's really amazing that 6 years have passed already. So the first time he started thinking about it was when, right out of the blue, 2 friends of ours mentioned it. And that's kind of a sign, if you think your husband or you may be called to the diaconate as a man in the church. Oftentimes God will bring people into your life, and it may not even be on your mind or your heart, but if it is, there could be affirmations, or there could be somebody placing it on your heart because God wants you to think about it. So I would say it was a long time ago. It was probably a good 15, 20 years ago.
Long ago?
Yeah, right after we came back to the church. So we're back in the church about 25 years, and we were on a pilgrimage to the Holy Land, and we had a wonderful deacon couple on our trip with us from the parish that we were at in St. Joan of Arc in the Archdiocese of Detroit. And this wonderful man, Deacon Gene DeCreasy, who's since passed away, sweet, sweet, dear man of the Lord. We just got to know them on the trip, and just out of the blue, he said one day on the bus, he said, have you ever thought about the diaconate? Dominic's like, the diaconate? We had just been back in the church so just a few years. It's like, where'd that come from?
Yeah.
He kind of put it aside, and then a few years later, my dear friend Lynn, who you met at the party, Lynn and Don, our good evangelical brother and sister, dear friends of ours, they live in Ohio, and they were at Dom's diaconate ordination, of course. But years ago, Lynn actually said to Dominic, when he was explaining an aspect of the faith to her, something about Catholicism that she didn't understand as a Protestant sister, says, you know, Dominic, you always do such a good job of explaining the faith. What can you do as a Catholic man in the church? So he kind of went through, well, I could be a Eucharistic minister, I could help out, I could do this, I could teach catechetical classes.
Right.
He says, and as a man, I could also be a deacon. And he explained the role of a deacon, and she said, I think you have to think about that. And so that kind of started the process. Now, for me, because it was my husband who brought me back to the church, I really thought very early on that he should be a deacon. But it has to be really his decision.
Right.
So I was thrilled when he finally made the decision to join the diaconate. I was thrilled, really excited.
But it takes an invitation like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
For me, in my Catholic formation in Latin America, the role of the deacon, we don't have permanent deacons. Until now, in my country, in Costa Rica, they are beginning to prepare the first generation of deacons.
So they just started to have deacons.
To me, it was all a mystery. And when I even found out, like, you can be a permanent deacon, really, how does that work? But the key thing about this was an invitation that came. Just like sometimes we see a young man and we see he has a devotion and he has really this desire to help the church, and we put the seed, we invite, we suggest, maybe you should consider being a priest at some point. I guess we can also invite a man who's married. Have you ever thought, and I actually did that once following, after many years of listening to your story on Catholic Connection on EWTN Radio, that your husband became a deacon. I even suggested it to one of my co-workers who really made a very good explanation about some aspect of the faith. And I said, I'm going to pray for your discernment for your permanent diaconate. Yeah. And he went like, what? Oh. But that's how the thought starts.
So is he in the diaconate now?
Well, you have to let time go by.
Right, so he's got to pray about
it. Yeah.
So from the time Dominic first, and you were thrilled, okay, then what came next, and then how long, like, I think you have to participate too.
Oh yes, it's very
important. With your husband.
And we're going to talk about that as well, because we know that our pastoral advisor, Father Frank, actually taught some of the classes of the diaconate.
Yes, he did.
When he was back on the East Coast for at St. Charles.
Matter of fact, Father Frank did that on his day off.
Of course he did.
He traveled an hour and a half from Staten Island, New York, all the way up to Port Chester by St. Joseph's
relaxing and taking it.
He never played golf. He taught in the seminary. That's what he did on his day off.
Priest.
And he taught the diaconate, and he found it to be a great joy. But one of the things Father Frank really pointed out to me, the key points of the program that he personally made a great importance on having the wives attend all the classes with their husbands. He
See,
made a point of that because he wanted them to be there together, learning together.
It depends on the diocese, though.
Right.
In some dioceses, you have to. In other dioceses, it's recommended. But depending on your situation, like if you have young children at home,
Right.
it's a lot of work. And
Right.
now, for example, let me tell you how it works. So you were asking me the question. So let's say your husband is interested in the diaconate.
Right.
You first have to apply. You have to put in a request, an application, and then you come in and they consider you. There is usually some sort of a meeting, a reflection meeting, where they go over the role of the deacon in the church and they go over the steps. And then you become an aspirant if you're accepted. So that's your first year. And then if you get through that, because it's all a process of discernment, then it's usually a 4 to 5 year program after that. Now, in the Archdiocese of Detroit, we have our own seminary, which is amazing. We have Sacred Heart Major Seminary, which is phenomenal. We have Dr. Janet Smith, Dr. Mary Healy, Dr. Robert Fastigi, Dr. Ralph Martin. I mean, it's just like, Catholic
Right.
Disneyland. It's like incredible.
Yeah.
But you have two portions. You have your education portion where you have to get some sort of a degree.
Right.
You can get, it depends again on the Archdiocese. Sometimes you don't have to get a master's. Dominic chose to get a master's because he's like Father Frank, a type A personality. So he has a master's in pastoral theology. Others can get the undergrad degree. But you have to go through the educational portion.
Right.
But then there's the formation portion as well, where it's the training. What does a deacon do? What is the wife's role? And it depends on the different dioceses. We didn't have to go to every class. We could audit them for free.
Right.
I didn't have the opportunity to do that because my schedule as a speaker would take me out of town quite frequently. But I always would schedule all of my events around the formation day. The formation day for us, for the wives, was mandatory,
Right.
unless you had a family emergency or something coming up.
Right.
So there's two components, and it depends on the diocese because sometimes they don't have a seminary, and so they will go once a weekend with classes and the formation all together. So it's a little bit easier for the wives to attend. Sometimes it's like the Archdiocese of Detroit, where we have a full-fledged seminary, and the guys can go and get the education. The wives can go if they like. They don't have to. And then we have the formation that's separate. But there's a lot of work. It's a big commitment. And then you never know for sure, just because it may be the desire on your heart when you start, doesn't mean that you're going to be automatically ordained a deacon, because you have to discern, just like the priesthood, going through that entire program.
Well, we did, of course, Teresa, I know for the show, some research. And currently in the United States, believe it or not, there are nearly 19,000 deacons serving in the United States Church, okay? 93% of whom are married deacons. And among those deacons, they were surveyed, and those deacons, about 31% said they struggle balancing ministry and
Now, this is a
family.
really important point, and this is why one of the reasons we wanted to do this show, because my husband and I spoke, we were keynote speakers last year in the summer of 2018 at the National Diaconate Congress. It was the 50th anniversary of the diaconate in the United States. You were talking about the situation in Costa Rica, which is actually true in other parts of the world. For example, Poland doesn't have deacons yet. And there are other parts of the world that don't have deacons. They're temporary deacons or transitional deacons becoming priests, but they don't have the diaconate. In the United States, it's very different. We, for whatever reason, took the bull by the horns and just forged ahead with the diaconate program. So we are like the leader in the world with deacons.
Wow. I never realized that.
Oh, yeah. I didn't either until we actually got into the diaconate program. At this diaconate Congress, what they did was they celebrated 50 years of the diaconate in the United States, and we addressed the deacon couples as keynotes because of that statistic that they brought out in Deacon Jesus magazine. See, they put you through all kinds of really good, solid theological training, but there's not anything in terms of what is it going to do to your marriage.
Right? Practical.
So Deacon Dom and I are really trying to work with dioceses around the country to come in and do retreats for deacon couples so they can understand how to, their marriage has got to come first.
Right.
The marriage has got to come first. And they were always told us when we were going through the diaconate, family work diaconate. They recognize that most of these guys are still working full-time.
Jobs, right?
Right,
Yeah.
so they don't just become a deacon and then quit. Most of them are working full-time, and then they have families as well. But see, a lot of times the men don't know when to say no because they want to be a good deacon when they first start, and so they're saying yes to everything.
Right.
Sometimes, like a young priest is so overly zealous, he's really excited, but then he gets burnt out, or God forbid, gets sick.
It's the same thing with the new deacon.
Yeah, there has to be a lot of balance, and it's something that we're working on to do with deacon couples so they can understand how important their marriage is.
And do you hear anything from children of deacons
Yes.
who have already?
Yes. I mean, there's a lot of pride. They're very proud of their fathers, but at the same time, if they're still in high school or grade school, it can be a little bit sensitive. It can be a little bit tough that they're doing too much. I'll never forget when we were going through formation, one of the couples told their story. This cute couple, you'd love them, Italian from New York. They're now in Michigan, but they're from Brooklyn, and they
Brooklyn,
just
see, of
Italian
course.
from Brooklyn.
Brooklyn, that's it.
But Phyllis was telling us, the ladies, one time about how her husband was so just excited to be a deacon, and they still had kids in grade school and high school, and he was never home, never home. And she'd try to be a good wife and try to, cook a meal, a nice Italian meal to be ready when he came home from whether it was a baptism class or a parish council meeting or whatever. And then one time he came home and she was that's it, basta, this is it, I gotta, talk to him. And his dinner wasn't there. And he says, well, don't you have anything for me to eat? She goes, heat something up in the microwave. She's, this has got to stop.
Well,
You've got to
was
spend
2 hours ago
yeah, exactly.
with the children.
Yeah,
you
there's gotta
weren't
be
here
balance.
once again,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
you can warm up the leftovers now. Yeah.
Right. And so I think, there really needs to be, the diaconate, again, in the United States, has done a great job of really developing programs around the country. And we do have the National Association of Diaconate Directors. But they're really working on the actual structure of the programs around the country, which is great. So there needs to be, and this is why they asked us to speak, there needs to be an emphasis on couples. Because as you said with that statistic, the majority of deacons are married. And 31% say they have a problem balancing marriage and family.
So that's, and I can see, just thinking about the state of the church, most parishes have just one priest.
Right.
And some priests, because, I travel a lot with Father Pavone, with Priests for Life, with all our ministry people, and I've seen some places in the country where one priest is covering 2 or 3 parishes.
Exactly.
And they have to travel. There's one priest just recently said to me, oh yeah, Janet, oh yeah, I got to drive, an hour this way to do this parish. Because on a Sunday, he starts at the one parish where he lives, says Mass. Then he gets in the car, drives an hour this way. And then after that one, he has to drive another 45 minutes that way. And all 3 parishes. So now you think, a priest like that who's really all by himself, if he has a deacon or 2 at each place, or just one deacon at each place, well, who's he going to lean on? The deacon.
There's also situations where, and I had a great interview with Archbishop Aquila from Denver about this, and I interviewed him on the phone because he was one of the keynote speakers of the Diaconate Congress last year, and he says that a lot of priests, if they're older and they're getting close to retirement, unfortunately they take advantage of some of the deacons, and he said that one of the first things he does with his priest is he says if you have a deacon, you have to make sure that that deacon takes time with his family. So a lot of the bishops recognize this, but they really need support, and so that's why we're really working hard, Deacon Dom and I, and we have the book Intimate Graces. It's going to be one of our resources that we wrote together that we use in our diaconate retreats. We actually have done a number of them now. We did a whole 3-day retreat in the Diocese of Green Bay for all the deacon couples there 2 years ago. We spoke at the Diaconate Congress. We speak often in Detroit for our diaconate couples, and we go all over the country, and we're going to start working with Greg and Julie Alexander of the Alexander House to minister specifically to deacon couples who are struggling in their marriage. So we have to take a break, but I know you have some more questions. And
I'm sure both of us, inquiring minds want to know.
Inquiring minds want to know
fascinating.
about our special topic for today's edition of the Catholic View for Women, the deacon's wife. And I'm one of them. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Catholic View for Women. I'm Teresa Tomeo, along with my co-hosts Elena Rodriguez and Janet Morana, and we're talking about one of my favorite topics, the diaconate, because I am married to an amazing deacon, the most adorable deacon on the planet, just saying, Deacon Dominic, and he's been ordained just over 6 years now, and it's just been just a delight. And Janet, you were with us when Dominic applied, when he went through formation, and then Father Frank came out and celebrated Mass with Dominic and our pastor, Monsignor Bulgarin.
Oh, please, you had to see. This
was amazing.
Deacons, just like priests, they have their first Mass, okay? So first he's ordained on a Saturday, right? And then we get to Sunday, his first Mass. Well, Teresa is there and I on the first row. And of course, who comes out but Father Frank and Deacon Dom together? Father Frank was the celebrant. And Teresa's there practically with like verklempt.
It was very emotional.
It's very emotional. And then she's got her cell phone there. Jam, get the pictures. I mean, like picture, and it was just a beautiful Mass. It was really beautiful, and it was amazing. But when I think back, Teresa, was we went to the Holy Land a few years before that, maybe a year or so, and you were saying I have to get the best gifts. I have to start getting them for Dominic when he's ordained. And I remember you fussing and trying to figure out what Deacon stole she was going to buy. We were at, I think, Galligantu.
Galligantu, because they have that beautiful, and that's the teardrop. Well, no, that is a church where Peter weeps, and when he's looking at Jesus, and Jesus says,
And I remember you buying the most beautiful stole, and she was so excited that, I can't wait till the ordination. I'm going to hide this jam. I'm going to hide this so Dominic can't find it, And so, I remember, just how excited you were and watching, because you saw how hard he had to study, and how much they have to go through, these deacons, to get to this point. And
also because God had done such a miracle in our life with our marriage, because we walked away from the faith, and we practically walked away from each other. And so every time I see him up there on the altar, it just shows what God can do. So if people are out there and they're in a struggling marriage, or you have children who've fallen away from God, I mean, God can turn our lives around and turn me into a Catholic talk show host, and Dominic into a deacon. There's hope for anybody.
There is.
I mean, it is a miracle. Every time I see him up at Mass, it's so beautiful. And it's such a unique role, the deacon. And what I really have learned as a deacon's wife is I so appreciate the church teaching on the priesthood and why priests don't marry. Now, priests could someday, because it's not dogma, there's a possibility of that. Right now they can't, but it could change. I hope it doesn't. Because as you just described, JM, that scene of a priest going here, there, and everywhere, well, then the deacon is doing that, and if the deacon if a priest is married, he's supposed to be married to the church. Jesus is the bridegroom, the church is the bride, so the priest in persona Christi represents that, and so his bride is the church, and so he's selflessly serving the church. How are you going to selflessly serve both the church and a family, a wife and children?
Well, and when you think about the family, it's not just the husband and wife, but I know, like in your situation, you have your mom, Rosie. And believe it or not, you might be her daughter, but holy mackerel, boy, does she depend on Dominic so much. So that's part of the equation too. I mean, although you and Dami don't have children, but you've got so much family right around you there that you minister to basically as, can you help me with this? I need that. And so that all factors in. And so I kind of understand that statistic where so many of these deacons say, struggling between this balancing act. And I think, like you said, some of them don't want to say no to their pastor when they say, this week, we have 3 wake services. Can you take the one this night or this night? And in the back of that deacon's head, that's my son's basketball game. I'm going to have to miss his basketball game. But at the same time, he wants to say yes to the pastor. So that's the constant. Was that what we're talking about, Teresa? That's the constant.
And in our case, because Dominic also speaks with me quite often, because we do a lot of couples retreats, not only for diaconate, but we speak as a married couple and do a lot of marriage encounter events. We actually talk to our pastor early on, and because we have our Archbishop's blessing of the ministry that we're both in, it's important to let them know. And if you're already doing a ministry and you're very involved in it, and it's something that's working for you, and your bishop is pleased with it, you could go to your bishop, you could go to your pastor and say, I'd like to continue this in some way, and then work it out. Now, there may be where your bishop is going to assign you to a particular parish or a specific assignment within the archdiocese or the diocese, and you are taking a vow of obedience to your bishop. But most bishops are very encouraging. If you have an interest in ministry, in addition to assigning you to a parish, they want you to flourish and to work in that area that you really like. So we've been very blessed with the blessing of our Archbishop Alan Vigneron, because he knows that we're very involved in these things, and so he's encouraged us, in addition to Dominic being in a parish, to continue doing what we're doing.
Well, I know in the Archdiocese of New York, at least when I was living there, and Father Frank was my parish priest, the deacons there, whatever was your parish when you were ordained, that became your parish.
See, it's different where we're from.
I know, and it kind of changes area to area.
I mean, I can see both. But at the same time, I think for Deacon Dominic, it was great to move to another parish, although we really wanted to be at St. Joan because of Monsignor, and we just love him so much.
Well, and you had been that parish
and that was the parish we were married in. But at the same time, going to a new parish, I think it's a better way to break a deacon in, because kind of you're like, that's just Dominic. We grew up with him in the parish,
you're not in your
no big deal.
Zone.
Yeah, it stretches you a little bit out of your comfort zone.
Yeah. Now, you were mentioning that you and Dominic are doing these retreats for deacons. Suppose someone's watching right now, and deacon wife is saying, "Oh, Teresa, my gosh, am I struggling right now? But there's no retreats in my diocese. There's nothing happening right now." I know you have that book, Intimate Graces. Touch on that a little bit for us, to tell us, how could that help a deacon and his wife?
Well, we actually use Intimate Graces in the diaconate couple programs that we do, and we have them read the book before we come in for a retreat.
Right.
And then what Intimate Graces is it's not just about deacons, it's for all married couples.
Right.
And we have different testimonies of couples who struggle with various issues, and we have good stories and struggling stories, and all the marriages were healed, but they all went through various things in their marriage. And at the end of each chapter, we have reflection questions for the couples to do. And at the end of the book, we have resources such as marriage encounter, different programs that are available if they need help in their marriage, even retrobuy if they're
I was going to say
really
retrobuy would be
struggling.
another thing. Right?
And so if you want us to come and speak, you can just go to my website at teresatomeo.com, and it's on under my speaking, and just send me an email. We'd love to come out to your parish or your diocese for deacon couples.
And I bet you, come on, Teresa, all these years, Dominic watching you nonstop with a microphone, out there speaking, did he ever think that he was going to be out there speaking?
No,
with
but he's
a
so
microphone?
good. And at first he didn't, because he and I, well, you
Well,
guys
because Dominic
know.
tends to be shy.
Right, yeah,
Those who don't know Dominic,
he's
he
I would
tends to be
say,
shy.
not so much shy, but he's just more of an introvert.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and then there's me,
Reserved.
and I'm just like out there all over the place. You
Exactly.
know, I'm just very, but it's such a good combination. I mean,
Right.
he's got such a dry sense of humor that he just cracks everybody up when we give our talk. I mean, he had him on the floor at the Diaconate Congress with some of his jokes about living with somebody like me who's so out there. And it's fun. I mean, it's really great working together as a couple. We just love it. Really love it.
I have one question. That's a procedural question mostly for, I'm thinking, couples who might be watching, husband and wife, and wondering, well, the process of formation and discernment for a permanent deacon is long, is many years. Is there any help in funding, or how does that also impact the family budget?
Sure, that's a great question. Normally what happens is the classes do cost some money depending on where you're going. And different programs vary in different dioceses. It depends how they fund them. But you can apply for funding. For example, in the Archdiocese of Detroit, the parishes have a certain amount of budgets where they can help men who are in the diaconate program.
Right.
Or if you have a certain retreat that you have to go to out of town if it's required, or a monthly retreat that most of the retreats that they have are free, like the formation days are free. What costs are the classes, the actual
the
education at
seminaries.
stake.
Yeah.
But there's grant money available, there's scholarship money available, so that's something to look into as well.
Yeah, so someone should not make that an obstacle, I guess
No,
is what you're saying.
no.
If you feel God's calling you to the diaconate, it's called, knock on the door and the things will open if,
Right.
if that's God's will for you, I
Yeah.
think, is what we're saying, right?
Yeah.
And doesn't some of this, Teresa, start way back to, in your parish, start with spiritual direction with the priest in your parish,
Right.
and
It really-
you start that
yeah.
conversation going,
Exactly.
Because I'm sure Dominic spoke to
Yeah.
Monsignor Bulgarin.
Well, yeah, and he also was, Monsignor is my spiritual director, but at that time he had a great spiritual director, Father John Ricardo, who really encouraged him in the diaconate to move forward because he saw certain gifts in him. And it comes about through prayer. It comes about through relationship with God, and then certain affirmations. I always tease my husband because Dominic, he's an engineer, and it takes him
Right.
10 years to buy a shirt. He analyzes everything. I mean, it's ridiculous. And so many people, not just Lynn and our friend Deacon Jean, told him that he should be a deacon, but my husband wants a sign. He wants it to drop down in the road and say, "Go here." And I'm like, that's not the way the Lord works. He doesn't work that way. And yet he actually did get one of those signs, and after years of analyzing whether he should even apply, he finally applied. So it's a process.
Did
It's
you
a
get any
process.
signs yourself?
Oh, I had signs along the way, but and I just knew because he was able to help me, and he was so clear in the way he explained the faith that if he can help me, he'll
There's
be a
other
great
people
deacon.
he could
can
be
help
helping,
people.
right?
So, wow, that went by fast. Janet, it's already teacher time.
Oh, it's teacher time,
Yeah.
homework.
Thanks, ladies, for all the great questions. And feel free, anyone out there, if you have a question about the diaconate, feel free to email us. I'll put you in touch with Deacon Dom as well if there's a guy out there who has a question.
Okay, and a girl.
And a girl.
Okay, of course.
But women can't be deacons, but we're just saying if you have a question about your husband applying or your son, let us know.
Exactly. Okay, number one is to read Intimate Graces by Teresa Tomeo and Dominic Pastore. I bet how many people don't know that your real last name is
Teresa
really
Tomeo Pastore.
Pastore.
Legally, it's Pastore.
Legally, it's Pastore. And that's available, of course, at the EWTN Religious Catalog, which is EWTNRC.com. And of course, we want to invite you to learn more about the diaconate. In your online search engine, you can type in, this is at EWTN's search engine, type in the word deacons and EWTN. You'll find a number of resources that EWTN provides for absolutely free. So there's a little homework assignment there to look
Yeah, and
further.
EWTN, as you said, with the faith column, if you look up Deacon, they'll have all
Yes,
kinds of
yeah.
information on
All
diaconate.
kinds of
Yeah.
information. Okay, and then there's the, of course, go to the CatholicViewForWomen.com for more information and sign up for our e-letter. And of course, go to our Facebook page, like the Catholic View for Women. And one more final thing, you can also go to our Priest for Life website because we have deacons in the service of life. And I know-
Dominic's a deacon, involved in Deacons for Life. Yes,
yeah,
he
Deacons
is.
for Life at Priest for Life at our homepage because we're trying to get that up and going a little bit more than it is right now. So a lot of opportunities, and do the homework.
That's right. And think about if it's something in your family, maybe your husband, your son, your brother, help them pray about the diaconate discernment. Thanks for watching. I'm Teresa Tomeo along with Elena Rodriguez and Janet Morana, and we'll be back with another episode very soon. We'll see you next time.